If an objective by Zelensky and the Europeans is to pull the Americans deeper into this, that is, persuade Trump not to, well, either try to end the war or outsource it to the Europeans, but rather get America pulled in. How do you think that's a pathway here based on the recent events? Because Trump seemingly took a very strong stance against this. But again, you never know what is rhetoric and how much he would have known in advance. But even the Financial Times had this article where they made the point that the goal for Zelensky would be, well, something along the lines of trying to get Trump on their side. So they would at least put the pressure on Putin. So, and then this is essentially as good as it gets, just trying to get the United States into this. And the Europeans haven't really shied away from making this clear as well, that this should be the goal, to put the Americans back on the front line against the Russians. Do you see a pathway here?
No, there is no pathway. In fact, that's what was so important about the meeting between Zelensky and Trump on Sunday. That they made it very clear, Trump afterwards, that no, we're not going to declare a ceasefire. No, I'm not offering up a bunch of new money to Zelensky. No, we're not going to be putting, there's no deadline. Concrete things that Zelensky wanted, he didn't get. Well, I was also fascinated, though, by Trump. Instead of talking so disparagingly about the Europeans, as he normally does, he was very oh, they're great people. Oh, they're wonderful leaders. Oh, they're just top. They're the best. He was rubbing butter on their ass. Just, he's going to say the nice words, but he's not going to match it with action. And the reaction out of Europe to what Trump said has been, pretty angry, and like, what the hell? So I think the Europeans realize that they've got to go their own way. That Trump's not with them on this, and that the odds that they can entrap Trump with something. That's what made this attack on Putin, or the Putin residence, on Sunday going into Monday, so crazy. Because again, I think it was done deliberately to derail the peace process, and I think it was also done as part. The move is afoot to get rid of Zelensky. Zelensky's usefulness has passed. He was good to go as president because he was seen as a guy who could go out and raise money. People liked him, short little guy, sort of kindly, and he could play the piano with his penis, that kind of thing. And he was getting money. The money was flowing in. And once it flowed in, it was flowing back out. At least $48 billion and maybe upwards of $110 billion. But his money-making days are over, it looks like. Particularly with the United States. There are the reports that General Zelensky, who was sort of exiled to London as the ostensible Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, is now headed back into this week, Friday or Saturday, to Kiev. And so, is there a possibility that he could be put into office as Zelensky would be encouraged to retire? Possibly. We're going to see. This is what is clear right now is Europe is in chaos and Ukraine is in chaos. They don't know what to do. And when you're faced in situations like that, it's not surprising that they would lash out with something as outlandish and dangerous as trying to attack a residence where Putin might have been.
Yeah, this I've seen now. I think his solution also, he signaled he wanted to quit his position as ambassador. And well, I kind of been going with that assumption when it's time for Zelensky to depart, and a lot of his inner circle has been departing. So his position is obviously quite weak, and even more so now with this corruption being linked to him as well. But
well, who do you think is pulling the strings? The way I assess it, Zelensky's not the guy in charge. He is the front guy. He's the chief puppet. He is like the organ grinder with a monkey on a string. The cranks the organ, the monkey dances. Zelensky's the dancing monkey. Question is, who is the organ grinder, or who are the organ grinders? I believe that the right sector, if you will, these ultra-nationalists that were described as neo-Nazis, I believe their leadership are the key ones directing the effort. And what makes Zelensky a more attractive person to them is Zelensky is ideologically aligned with them, much more so than Zelensky. Zelensky just was a latecomer to this party. And frankly, I don't think that those ultra-nationalists, the ones so closely aligned with Bandera, et cetera, have any trust or confidence in Zelensky. And so they may have well been behind this attack to go after Putin, both as a way to embarrass Zelensky, and maybe if they'd pulled it off and got Putin, that they say, okay, now our problem's solved, which is, I think, foolish analysis on their part.
Yeah, I think if Putin was killed, the consequences. I mean, there would be no restraints anymore, though. This would be extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
But what do you make of the meeting, though, now between Trump and Zelensky overall? Because as we know, Trump has been going back and forth. He's positioning himself as this mediator and a peacemaker, but this is very much still the U.S. is very much still deeply involved in this war. It's after a year, it's hard to take Trump seriously when he says, "Oh well, it's Biden's war, it's not mine." I mean, he hasn't done really anything not anything. That's not true, but he could have pulled the United States out of this thing, but he hasn't done that. But so I was also wondering how he would have act in this meeting with Zelensky, and I thought he wouldn't swing completely back to Zelensky like he's done in the past, because there's no cards to play anymore. Things are falling apart. But what do you make of this?
Well, let's start with they were apparently discussing Zelensky's 20-point peace plan. Russia has rejected that plan out of hand. It's not even a starting point. So, so Zelensky and Trump are negotiating over a 20-point plan that's no longer relevant. They might as well be sitting down and saying, "Hey, let's see if we can create a unicorn in a laboratory." It's not going to happen. So it was a much more cordial meeting. I did find it noteworthy at the press conference that Trump talked about setting up working groups, and boy, his working group had everybody. It had Witkoff, Kushner, Marco Rubio, Pete Hegseth, everybody. There's nobody be left in Washington to work. And invariably, if they do set up such a working group, those are long-term negotiations that go on for a while. And so while that's happening, the Russian military advance is accelerating, not decelerating. And they are moving very, very rapidly, particularly in Zaporozhye. Ukraine does not have any defense network in Zaporozhye. And so the Russians will be up and have the city of Zaporozhye itself surrounded, maybe by as soon as the end of February. They're moving that fast. It was, the meeting was not a PR disaster like that February Oval Office press conference where Trump and J.D. Vance got into it with Zelensky. But Zelensky didn't come away with anything concrete to say, okay, man, we've got a path forward. Here's the map. Here's how we're going to beat Russia. There is no path forward. That's the problem.